It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro?
Good news, everyone!
Good news, everyone. It is March 14th, 2023. It is March break. I hope everyone's having a great time doing what they got to do. We're about to dig into the news here on My Homie Tutaro. A topless protester crashed the Juno's broadcast as The Weeknd wins their fifth award. So, obviously, I'm not actually a huge pop culture nerd or anything like that, but I thought that this was kind of interesting. This topless protester went on stage when Avril Lavigne was announcing, I don't know, some award, and part of what they have on printed on their body is "Land Back" and "Save the Greenbelt." So this is so obviously something that is like getting people talking. However, I feel like people aren't really talking about what this person was protesting. They're more just talking about the person being topless. So, is this effective? I guess we will see. Um, I wish it was maybe more effective towards talking about the issues and less effective about maybe talking about boobies, but we will see. We don't really know who this person is yet. I'm hoping that they maybe come out with a statement, because the way that these things have kind of worked in recent times, if you think about like the throwing Campbell soup at the paintings and stuff, is like it's really good to match up that publicity with a public statement or a video as well to highlight these issues. So Avril Lavigne was announcing something, and this person who had pasties on their nipples as well, so they're protesting a lot of things, but maybe not free the nipple. In addition to land back and saving the green belt, um, so the Avril Lavigne, who everyone is saying like, why did this protester have to go and make things so complicated and whatever? But that is the most obvious Canadian joke you could possibly make, and we're not gonna make it here. Okay. The pop punk princess Avril Lavigne appeared blindsided by the crasher and proceeded to swear at her, demanding she get off the stage. The person was quickly escorted away by security. Now it says here that Avril Lavigne swore at her, but honestly, it wasn't like aggressive or anything. That it was basically just like, "Hey, I'm kind of like in the middle of something. Like, could you not just like full on interrupt me?" And it wasn't an aggressive swearing or anything like that. So I guess like Avril Lavigne, they tried to continue doing their job, and they did their best. They probably didn't even have time to kind of like take stock as to what was even being protested or anything like that. So I don't blame Avril in this case. Simu Liu also said sorry about the boobs. If you don't know, Simu Liu was hosting the Juno Awards and said sorry about the boobs, also joking that if you had told me before I hosted there would be someone who would take their shirt off at the Junos and it wouldn't be me, I would be shocked. So, as Global News here is also putting in their headlines, this was about the Green Belt, and sadly we don't see many people covering what the person was protesting. So I just wanted to highlight the most recent news here about the Ontario Greenbelt, which is that as we've kind of known all along, developing the Ontario Greenbelt is not needed for the 1.5 million new home target, according to regional planning group. I would say even like groups, like there are multiple sources that are saying like, hey, we don't need to develop this protected land, and it's basically all a sham in my opinion. Ontario's largest municipalities already have more than 1.1 million new homes in the development approvals pipeline, according to a new analysis that casts doubt on the government's rationale for opening up the protected green belt for housing. So, if you don't know, Ontario has a goal of 1.5 million new homes over the next decade, and if we already have 1.1 in existing in the largest municipalities, that is pretty much all the way there. Now, there are a couple factors at play why the Conservative government of Ontario is trying to justify this. One is the uptick in immigration at the federal level. Obviously, a lot of those people are probably going to end up in the GTA because it's one of the most economically successful, most populous areas. So they're saying that in order to fulfill that housing quota of 1.5 million and even more, they need to open up this land. However, um, basically everyone is saying, hey, you know what, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do this. And there's been a lot of controversy of Doug Ford being in bed with wealthy developers who want to develop that land. And coincidentally, developers had bought up that Greenbelt land, which you weren't allowed to build on, before this was announced. So the analysis is the latest of a string of reports, including by the government's own industry-led housing task force, that have concluded that Ontario does not have a shortage of land for new housing. It's like, okay, we don't have a shortage. Why are we choosing to develop this land? Now, part of the argument is that it's we can build these homes really, really quickly. It's really difficult maybe to build in existing cities because you have to go through the proper measures. You have to go through the municipality. You have to get the rezoning laws fixed. You have to get approval from council and the community, and you have to make sure that there's proper infrastructure for these buildings. And it's like, okay, so it's a bit of a longer process than just saying, hey, look at this undeveloped land and we can just build 50,000 homes on it really quickly. And we probably already have all in our head like what those homes will look like. They're going to be the cookie cutter single detached homes, and every one of them is going to look the same. And it's kind of just like not really thinking of building a neighborhood or helping a place flourish, but really just trying to get something built as quick as possible, which to me does not make for very good urban planning, very good kind of like community living either. So, of course, the article goes into the allegations against Doug Ford, of which people are probably, pretty well versed in at this point. But what they don't include is that the necessary infrastructure for these areas is not built. So when they talk about, oh, we can build 50,000 houses really quick on this undeveloped land, they're forgetting that, okay, well, you need sewage, you need new grocery stores, you need like maybe a hospital, you need schools. So it's like, okay, sure, you can build a lot of houses really quick, but how quickly can you build that necessary infrastructure to service the people who end up living in those houses? And my answer there is like, I don't think very quickly. And that's kind of like something that a lot of people are going to like overlook as the Ford government goes down this initiative. So keeping this aligned with land back as well, I thought there's an interesting story coming out of Alberta that kind of illustrates the trend of paving over the red tape and the dangers of not following proper regulations when it comes to environmental exploitation. So, Ottawa has ordered Imperial Oil to contain the leak of toxic water. Now, this is something that they've known about for a long time, and it took them, I believe, 9 months to properly report this to the governing bodies here and the First Nations of whom this affects. So, Ottawa has told Imperial Oil Resources Limited to take immediate action at its Curl Oil Sand site and contain the seepage of toxic tailings tainted water that it says it's harmful to the fish. The federal government, um, local Indigenous communities, and the public at large were not informed of the leak last May until months afterward, when a separate incident at Curl spilled 5.3 million liters of water. So obviously, this is the horrible disaster. Basically, something that we know happens. Oil spills, it gets into the water system, and it affects most of all, First Nations who are depending on that water, depending on that food and wildlife in order to sustain themselves. So this I just wanted to highlight this as an extension of land back. So Imperial Oil first informed the Alberta Energy Regulator about the leak just north of the Curl site in May. The provincial regulator was supposed to notify the federal government within 24 hours, but the ECCC didn't find out until it had been going on for 9 months. Right. And so this is a trend that, of course, we're seeing in Ontario. They want to cut the red tape around mining in Northern Ontario, which a lot of First Nations are saying, hey, no, you can't do that. And if you want to do that, you're going to have to kill us, is actually literally what one of the First Nations leaders said in Northern Ontario. So this, when we talk about land back, I think we could even start at a point of like, how about leaving the land alone as it currently exists? How about not making things worse so that we can designate more areas to First Nations peoples? But we can barely even honor the existing land that First Nations peoples have. So in addition to land, there is, of course, a conversation about identity as well. Now, this is another story that has come out about a Pretendian, which is a pretend Indian or a pretend Indigenous person. For some reason, they always seem to be at universities, possibly because there is incentive for people to be of a certain demographic, and there are maybe potentially grants available to them. And we have another story coming out from Memorial University. The president is stepping away after questions raised about Indigenous heritage claims. So this is Memorial University president Vian Timmins, who has in the past claimed that they are of Mi'kmaq origin. So the president of Memorial University in Newfoundland apologized and stepped aside temporarily Monday in another post-secondary scandal following questionable claims of Indigenous ancestry. Now, as I was reading this, I thought, what, maybe we should give this person the benefit of the doubt. They seem to understand why this was wrong and why they should have nuance when they're talking about their identity. But as you might find out in a moment, it's not really worth giving them the benefit of the doubt, unfortunately. So Dr. Timmins, who grew up in Labrador City, Newfoundland, Labrador, has said that her family is of Mi'kmaq or heritage, something she learned in the 30s from her father when she was doing research on Mi'kmaq literacy in Atlantic Canada. So of course it seems like one of these things is like, how do you learn so later on in life that you are of a certain ethnicity? And my understanding is that Indigenous communities say it's actually being part of those communities that makes you Indigenous. It's not just that you are of certain blood percentage, so this is something that is has been popularized in recent years, and there's been more conversation and dialogue about it. Recently, she said she is not Mi'kmaq, but does not claim an Indigenous identity. Recently, she said she is not Mi'kmaq and does not claim an Indigenous identity. Okay. I sincerely regret any hurt or confusion sharing my story may have caused. That was never my intention, and I deeply apologize to those I've impacted, she said in a statement Monday, adding that sharing her story of discovering her heritage was in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. While this personal process started many years ago, I recognize these actions may be hurtful or cause harm. So this was the point of the story where I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe this person deserves the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they did find in good faith later on in life that they were of Mi'kmaq ancestry, and they explored that. I think, that is maybe a natural tendency to explore part of your identity that you didn't know about. I think anyone might consider doing that. However, here's where it becomes problematic to me. In the past, she claimed membership in the Bras d'Or Mi'kmaq First Nation, which is not recognized by the Union of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq or by the federal government. Over time, I became uncomfortable with that membership as I was not raised in the community or culture, so I discontinued it, she wrote in a statement to Memorial students last week prior to stepping aside. Dr. Timmins, however, took on the role of president in 2022 and was the recipient of the 2019 Indispire Award for Education, which honors an extraordinary group of individuals from diverse Indigenous communities. Dr. Timmins, who is identified as Mi'kmaq on the Indispire website, accepted the award in 2019 while she was president of the University of Regina. So even though maybe now she understands how it's important for her not to use her blood as a way to get awards or grants. In 2019, she didn't really understand that, and she accepted this award, which sometimes these awards, come with money on behalf of a Indigenous community that she now understands that she was never a part of. So it's very kind of bizarre to see people claim this identity when it's really not for them to claim, and it raises a lot of interesting questions about indigeneity and who has access to it as an identity. So, following up to this, they have changed the rules around who can be hired as basically a diversity hire, and they don't just take people's word for it anymore. They actually check with the First Nations to see if they are part of that community and part of that identity. So it's important not to engage in this behavior, not to take up space or resources from people who are actually living in these intersectional identities. And it's of course important also to not infringe on First Nations land as it currently exists. And it would be nice if we gave some land back as well. All right, thanks so much for watching my homie Tutaro on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, comment, do your thing if you want to. Put in timestamps. My question of the day: yesterday we were talking about the Oscars. I guess today we're talking about the Junos. Did anybody get robbed? Did anybody get elevated who you thought wasn't going to get an award? Did Simulu do a great job? I don't know. I don't even know if I care. But if you do, please comment below and let us know. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.